The massive observation dome of the Ardelian Science Center offered a clear view of the approaching disaster. Kalira stood alone, her crystalline form reflecting the dim emergency lights. The quantum anomaly that was consuming their star system had grown larger again overnight. Its swirling black mass now covered almost a quarter of their once beautiful sky. She pressed her three-fingered hand against the cool glass. There was no more time for hope or for new solutions. The emergency council had made its decision. After 3,000 years of peaceful existence among the stars, the Ardelian civilization would ask for help. The communication chamber was located deep underground, protected by layers of dense metal and crystal composites. Terran, the last ambassador of Ardelia, waited by the transmission console. His usually bright blue skin had faded to a dull gray, a sign of extreme stress among their kind. "Is the message ready?" Kalira asked, her voice soft but steady. Terran nodded. "I have included everything. Our coordinates, our situation, the time we have left. I've attached our complete historical and cultural archives as well." He hesitated. "Do you really believe someone will come?" "We have answered countless distress calls throughout our history," Kalira replied. "The Galactic Council has over 300 member civilizations. Surely some will remember our aid to them." Terran's expression remained doubtful, but he turned to the console and pressed his palm against the activation crystal, the ancient communication network that their ancestors had helped establish thousands of years ago, hummed to life. The message, their desperate plea for evacuation, shot outward through subspace channels to every corner of the galaxy. "Now we—" "Wait," Terran said. Kalira looked at the emergency timer on the wall. "We have 27 days before the anomaly reaches our planet." 47 light-years away, Alan Russell slouched in his chair at the Deep Space Communication Array in New Mexico. The midnight shift was always quiet, but tonight seemed especially boring. He sipped his lukewarm coffee and glanced at the monitor displays. Everything normal. No interesting signals from any of NASA's deep space probes. He was about to start his routine system check when one of the displays flashed. A new signal, strong and regular, was being received by the array's most sensitive dish. Alan straightened in his chair. "That's weird," he muttered. He tapped a few commands, redirecting the array to focus on the signal source. The pattern strengthened, clear against the background noise of space. "Diane," he called to his colleague who was cataloging data in the next room. "Can you come look at this?" Diane Powell appeared in the doorway, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "What's up?" "I'm picking up something strange. Too regular to be natural, too complex to be one of ours." Alan pointed to the screen where the signal pattern was displayed as a waveform. Diane's eyes widened as she looked at the display. She moved to her workstation and quickly ran the signal through several filters. "It's definitely artificial, and it's not coming from any known satellite or space probe. Could it be military? Russian? Chinese?" Alan asked. "No way. Look at the signal origin." She pointed to the coordinates. "It's coming from somewhere in the Cygnus constellation, over 40 light-years away." Alan felt his heart begin to race. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Diane nodded slowly. "Either this is the most elaborate hoax ever pulled, or we're receiving a signal from another civilization." For several moments, neither spoke. The enormity of what they might be witnessing hung in the air between them. "We need to call Director Winters," Alan finally said. "But first, let's make absolutely sure this isn't some kind of equipment malfunction." They spent the next hour running diagnostics, checking and rechecking their findings. The signal remained steady, repeating with mathematical precision every 12 minutes. It contained blocks of data, complex but with clear patterns that suggested language. "It's real," Diane whispered. "It's really real." Alan picked up the phone to call their supervisor, his hand trembling slightly. "What do you think they're saying?" he asked as he dialed. Diane was already working on the preliminary analysis. "Based on the mathematical structure, I think it might be some kind of standardized format, like a template for communication between different species, Director Gregory Winters arrived at the facility an hour later, his face showing both skepticism and poorly hidden excitement. He reviewed their findings in silence, occasionally asking sharp technical questions. "You're certain this can't be explained by any natural phenomenon?" he asked for the third time. "Absolutely certain," Alan replied. "The signal contains prime number sequences, mathematical constants, and what appears to be coded information. Nature doesn't communicate like that." Winters nodded slowly. "We need to bring in the cryptography team, and I'll have to notify Washington." He looked at both of them seriously. "Until further notice, this discovery is classified. No calls to family, no social media, nothing." By morning, the small communication facility had transformed into a hub of frantic activity. Experts from various government agencies arrived hourly. Among them was Carolyn Mitchell, the country's leading expert in linguistics and communication theory. She worked closely with Diane, analyzing the signal patterns. After 12 hours of non-stop work, their efforts yielded the first breakthrough. "It's a distress call," Carolyn announced to the room of tired scientists and government officials. The mathematical patterns at the beginning are attention markers, followed by what appears to be identification information. The bulk of the message contains complex data, but the repetition and urgency markers strongly suggest a civilization in trouble. "Can we tell what kind of trouble?" Winters asked. Carolyn pointed to a specific pattern in the signal. "This sequence keeps appearing alongside what we believe are time markers. Whatever is happening, it's going to happen soon." Alan, who had been working on the spatial coordinates embedded in the signal, looked up from his computer. "I've pinpointed the source. It's a star system about 47 light-years away, and based on the signal's properties, it was sent very recently." "That's impossible," one of the NASA officials objected. "Even at light speed, a signal from that distance would take 47 years to reach us." "Unless they have technology that allows faster-than-light communication," Alan replied quietly, "which means they're far more advanced than we are." Heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization wasn't a greeting or a scientific exchange. It was a cry for help. Director Winters finally broke the silence. "I'll be calling an emergency meeting with the President and the United Nations Security Council. In the meantime, I want every piece of information you can extract from this signal." As the others returned to work with renewed urgency, Alan stood by the window looking up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, an entire civilization was waiting for an answer. And somehow, their distress call had reached Earth, a planet that had never even sent a human being beyond its own moon. "We heard you," he whispered to the stars. "Now we just need to figure out how to help." Days passed on Ardelia as responses from across the galaxy began to arrive. Kalira and Terran waited in the communication chamber, their hope rising with each new signal. But that hope quickly turned to despair. "The Meridian Council regrets to inform you that we cannot provide evacuation assistance at this time. Our non-interference protocols prevent us from—" Terran stopped reading the message aloud, his voice cracking. He moved to the next one. "The Vorex Empire extends sympathy for your situation but must decline assistance due to resource allocation constraints and—" Again, he couldn't finish. Message after message arrived, all with the same answer. No help would come. Some cited ancient laws about non-interference. Others claimed they lacked the resources. The Junctian Alliance, oldest of all galactic civilizations, expressed deep concern that the quantum anomaly might be contagious and refused to send ships anywhere near Ardelian space. Kalira sat heavily in her chair, her crystalline body dulling with each rejection. "I don't understand. We have helped so many of them. The Vorex suffered a plague century just 300 years ago. We sent our medical ships without hesitation. And the Meridians," Terran added bitterly. "We shared our atmospheric restoration technology when their homeworld was poisoned by solar flares. Now they hide behind protocols." They sat in silence as the final responses came in. Out of 300 civilizations in the Galactic Council, not one had agreed to send ships. They offered condolences, scientific data, and in some cases, promises to preserve Ardelian cultural records. But not a single vessel was coming to help the actual people. "We are alone," Terran whispered. On Earth, a different kind of tension filled the air. The United Nations Security Council had convened an emergency session in New York. Representatives from every major nation sat around the circular table, their faces showing a mix of disbelief, excitement, and fear. Director Winters stood at the podium, presenting the findings from the Deep Space Communication Array. Behind him, a large screen showed the decoded portions of the alien message. "We are certain this is a genuine distress call from an advanced civilization approximately 47 light-years from Earth," he explained. "Our team has worked around the clock to decode their message. They call themselves the Ardelians. Their star system is being destroyed by what they describe as a quantum singularity, something like a black hole, but with different properties." The UN Secretary General leaned forward. "And they are asking for evacuation assistance?" "Yes, sir. Based on the time markers in their message, they have less than 3 weeks before their planet becomes uninhabitable." The Russian representative spoke up. "With all due respect, what could we possibly do? We have no faster-than-light travel. We can barely reach our own moon." Murmurs of agreement spread through the room. The Chinese delegate nodded. "While this discovery is momentous, any rescue mission seems impossible." Alan Russell, who had been asked to attend the meeting along with Diane Powell and Carolyn Mitchell, raised his hand. When the Secretary General acknowledged him, he stood. "We've been analyzing the technical data included in their message," Alan said. "The Ardelians included detailed specifications of their FTL communication technology, as well as star charts and navigation information. We believe this was intentional. They're giving us the tools to reach them." Diane added, "Our physicists think we could adapt some of this technology to modify our existing spacecraft, specifically the experimental NSV Horizon that was being prepared for the Mars colony supply mission." This statement caused an uproar in the chamber. The British representative shouted over the noise, "You're suggesting we take our most advanced spacecraft, worth billions, and attempt to retrofit it with alien technology we barely understand?" "Yes," Alan said simply. "That's exactly what we're suggesting." Patrick Summers, the lead NASA engineer who had been called in to consult, stepped forward. "We've reviewed the technical data. It's advanced, yes, but not incomprehensible. The principles build on quantum theories our scientists have been working with for decades. With international cooperation and pooling of resources, we believe a modified FTL drive could be constructed and installed on the horizon within 2 weeks." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Secretary General spoke carefully. "Even if this were possible, and I'm not saying it is, such a mission would be incredibly dangerous, possibly one way." "We're aware of that," Alan replied. "But somebody out there needs help." They reached out across 47 light-years of space asking for assistance. They trusted that whoever received their message would care enough to try. Carolyn Mitchell stood up next to Alan. In their message, the Ardelians included a complete cultural and historical archive. We've only translated a small portion, but what we've seen shows a civilization that values compassion and mutual aid. They've helped other species throughout their history. Now no one is helping them. The French representative frowned. "How do you know this? How do you know others haven't responded?" "Their message included updates," Diane explained. "They've been adding to it as they receive responses from other civilizations they contacted. Every single one has refused to help." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, the American representative spoke. "The United States is willing to commit resources to this mission. We will make the horizon available and provide whatever technical support we can." Slowly, other nations began to pledge support as well. Not all. Some remained skeptical or fearful, but enough to move forward. As the meeting adjourned, plans were already being made to assemble an international team of scientists, engineers, and potential crew members. The NSV Horizon would be relocated to a secure facility where work could begin immediately on its modification. Alan, Diane, and Carolyn stood together by the window, looking out at the New York skyline. "Do you think we can really do this?" Diane asked softly. Alan nodded. "I think we have to try. We're probably the least advanced civilization that received their message, but we might be the only ones willing to help." "That says something about humanity, doesn't it?" Carolyn mused. "It says something about all advanced civilizations," Alan replied. "Maybe technological progress and moral progress don't always go hand in hand." As they watched the sun set over the city, none of them could have imagined how their lives and the course of human history were about to change forever. The NASA facility in Houston buzzed with activity day and night. Engineers, scientists, and military personnel from 27 countries worked in shifts that never ended. At the center of this storm of activity stood the NSV Horizon, Earth's most advanced spacecraft. Originally designed for Mars missions, it was now being transformed into humanity's first attempt at interstellar travel. Captain Julia Hayes walked through the busy hangar, nodding to crew members as she passed. As a veteran astronaut with 3 space station missions behind her, she had been the natural choice to command this impossible journey. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. "Captain, we need you in the engine room," called Lieutenant Commander Keith Barnes, her second in command. Tall and serious, Keith had been working with the engineering team on the experimental drive system. Julia followed him down a narrow corridor to where Patrick Summers and his international team were installing the modified engine components. The engine room was nearly unrecognizable. Strange new devices built based on the Ardelian specifications were being connected to the Horizon's conventional systems. "How's it looking?" Julia asked. Patrick ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "We're making progress. Dr. Franklin's quantum tunneling breakthrough was the key. We still don't fully understand how it works, but the math checks out." Dr. William Franklin, a physicist who had been working on theoretical faster-than-light travel for years, looked up from his calculations. "The Ardelian data confirmed what I had suspected. Space-time isn't as rigid as we thought. With enough energy focused in the right quantum configuration, we can create a temporary tunnel through subspace." Julia nodded, as if she understood completely. The truth was, most of the science was beyond her. Her job was to get her crew there and back safely, using technology that until 2 weeks ago had been considered impossible. "Will it be ready in time?" she asked. Patrick glanced at the countdown clock on the wall, a constant reminder of the Ardelians' remaining time. It showed just under 13 days. "It'll be ready. It has to be." On Ardelia, Kalira stood before the Emergency Council, presenting her latest findings. "The quantum anomaly has accelerated again. We now have 11 days before it reaches our main continent." The council members, the few government officials who remained after most had fled with their families to the farthest regions of the planet, looked at her with resignation. They had accepted their fate. "We should begin the final evacuations to the underground shelters," one of them suggested. "At least some of our people may survive a few extra weeks there." Kalira was about to agree when Terran burst into the chamber, his blue skin suddenly glowing brighter than it had in days. "We received a new transmission from the signal we sent toward the outer rim." "Another rejection?" asked a council member tiredly. "No," Terran said, his voice filled with disbelief. It's a response from a species calling themselves humans. They say they're coming to help." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Kalira moved quickly to Terran's side. "Show me." He handed her the data tablet. She read the message, her crystalline eyes widening. "This can't be right. According to our galactic surveys, this species hasn't even established colonies on other planets in their own system. They're barely space-capable. Yet they say they're coming," Terran insisted. "They've included their estimated arrival time and technical specifications of their vessel. They're asking about our atmosphere, gravity, and biology to prepare for evacuation." Kalira ran a quick calculation. "Based on these specifications, their chances of reaching us safely are less than 3%. And even if they do, their ship is tiny. It could only evacuate a small fraction of our population." "But they're trying," Terran said softly. When hundreds of advanced civilizations turned away, these humans, these primitives by galactic standards, are attempting the impossible to save strangers. For the first time in many days, Kalira felt something other than despair. It wasn't exactly hope. The situation was still nearly hopeless. But it was something close to wonder. Back on Earth, the final preparations for launch were underway. The modified Horizon had been moved to a secure launch facility in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The international crew of 12 had been selected, the best pilots, engineers, and scientists humanity had to offer. Captain Hayes addressed them in the briefing room. "I won't lie to you. This mission has been put together in 2 weeks instead of the years it would normally take. We're using technology we barely understand. The chances of success are slim, and the chances of return are even slimmer." She looked at each crew member in turn. "This is strictly volunteer. Anyone who wants to back out can do so now with no shame or blame." No one moved. "We've all seen the Ardelian transmissions," said Carolyn Mitchell, who had been selected as the communications specialist. "Their civilization is beautiful. Their art, their science, their philosophy. They deserve to survive." "Besides," added Keith Barnes with a grim smile, "how often do you get the chance to save an alien civilization? If we pull this off, it'll be one hell of a story to tell our grandkids." "If we have grandkids," someone muttered, but there were smiles around the room nonetheless. The launch was scheduled for the following morning. As the crew made their final preparations, world leaders made speeches about international cooperation and the historic nature of the mission. Religious leaders offered prayers. Ordinary people around the globe held vigils and watched the news for updates. Not everyone supported the mission. Protesters gathered outside space agencies worldwide, arguing that the resources should be used for Earth's problems. Some religious groups declared the aliens were a hoax or a demonic trick. Military leaders from several nations warned about revealing Earth's location to potentially hostile aliens. But for most of humanity, the mission represented something profound, the idea that in a vast, cold universe, compassion could reach across the stars. That night, Julia Hayes couldn't sleep. She stood by the window of her temporary quarters looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, a dying civilization waited, clinging to the slim hope that humans, a species that had only taken its first steps into space, would somehow cross 47 light years to save them. "We're coming," she whispered to the stars. "Against all odds, we're coming." Launch day arrived with clear skies over the Pacific. The NSV Horizon sat on its platform, surrounded by water on all sides, a safety measure in case the experimental drive caused unexpected effects. Captain Julia Hayes and her crew of 11 made their final preparations, each person quiet with their own thoughts. "All systems check complete," Lieutenant Commander Keith Barnes reported from his station. "We're as ready as we'll ever be." Julia nodded and opened the communication channel to Mission Control. "Horizon to base, we are ready for launch sequence." "Copy." "That Horizon," came the response from Director Winters. "You are cleared for launch. The eyes of the world are upon you." That wasn't an exaggeration. Nearly every television and streaming service worldwide was broadcasting the event. Billions of people watched as the final countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The conventional engines fired up, a familiar technology that would take them beyond Earth's atmosphere. The experimental drive would only be activated once they were in space. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. The Horizon rose slowly at first, then with increasing speed as it broke free of Earth's gravity. The crew felt the familiar pressure of acceleration pushing them back into their seats. This part, at least, was something they had trained for. Once they reached orbit, Julia gave the order to prepare the experimental drive. "Dr. Franklin, status on the quantum tunneling system?" Dr. William Franklin checked his instruments carefully. The physicist had spent the past 2 weeks barely sleeping, perfecting the adaptation of Ardelian technology. "Power level stable. Quantum field generators online. We're ready for the first test." Julia took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Either the drive would work as they hoped, or Well, there were many possible outcomes. Few of them. Good. Activate the drive at minimum power, she ordered. Just enough for a small space-time displacement. Franklin nodded and carefully adjusted the controls. Initiating quantum field in 3, 2, 1. A high-pitched hum filled the ship, rising in intensity until it was almost painful. Warning. Lights flashed across several control panels. The horizon shuddered violently. Hull integrity at 80%, called out Keith. Power fluctuations throughout the ship. Stabilize it, Dr. Franklin, Julia ordered, gripping her seat as the ship continued to shake. I'm trying. Franklin's fingers flew over the controls. The quantum field is more powerful than our simulations predicted. It's trying to form a full tunnel. Shut it down, Julia commanded. I can't. Once initiated, the process has to complete, Franklin shouted over the noise. For several terrifying seconds, it seemed the horizon might tear itself apart. Then suddenly, the shaking stopped. The warning lights ceased. Through the viewport, the stars looked different. Status report, Julia ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Keith checked his instruments, then checked them again in disbelief. Captain, according to our position calculations, we've just traveled approximately 2 light years in under 30 seconds. A stunned silence fell over the bridge. 2 light years, a distance that would have taken conventional spacecraft thousands of years to cross. The drive is offline, Franklin reported. Cooling systems are engaged. We should be able to activate it again in about 6 hours. Julia smiled for the first time since launch. Then it works. We can reach the Ardelians. If the ship holds together, Keith cautioned. That was just our first jump, and we have many more to go. Over the next 7 days, the Horizon made a series of jumps through space, each one pushing the ship and its crew to their limits. The quantum drive caused enormous stress on the hull. Systems failed and were repaired on the fly. The crew endured physical effects no human had ever experienced, their bodies reacting to the warping of space-time around them. After each jump, Dr. Franklin refined the drive's settings, learning through trial and error how to better control the quantum field. By the 5th jump, the violent shaking had reduced to a manageable vibration. Between jumps, Carolyn Mitchell continued to study the Ardelian transmissions, learning more about the aliens they hoped to save. Their biology is silicon-based rather than carbon, she reported during one crew briefing. They require a different atmospheric mix than we do. We'll need to modify the cargo bay to accommodate them. The ship's engineer, Luis Vega, worked with his team to make the necessary changes. We can adjust the environmental controls in sections C through F. That should give us room for about 40 Ardelians, assuming the size estimates are correct. 40 out of a population of millions, Julia said grimly. We'll need to ask them who we should prioritize. They mentioned having ships of their own, Carolyn pointed out. Maybe we can help them make those ships space-worthy. After the final jump, the 8th, the Horizon emerged into the Ardelian star system. The view that greeted them was both beautiful and terrifying. The planet Ardelia hung in space like a blue-green jewel, but nearby loomed the quantum anomaly, a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to bend light around it. My God, whispered Keith. It's consuming the entire system. Julia opened a channel. This is Captain Julia Hayes of the Earth vessel NSV Horizon, broadcasting to the planet Ardelia. We have received your distress call and have come to offer assistance. For a long moment, there was no response. Then, the communication system crackled to life. Earth vessel, this is Terran, ambassador of Ardelia. Your arrival is unexpected. We had calculated your chances of success at less than 3%. Julia smiled. We humans tend to beat the odds when motivated, Ambassador. We're preparing to enter orbit and begin evacuation procedures. We have prepared landing coordinates for you, Terran replied. Our people, Captain Hayes, I must express the profound gratitude of my entire species. When the great civilizations of the galaxy abandoned us, you came. You who have barely taken your first steps into space. It was the right thing to do, Julia said simply. As the Horizon moved into orbit around Ardelia, the crew got there first. Close view of the planet. Much of the northern hemisphere was already being distorted by the quantum anomaly's pull. The atmosphere was visibly thinning in places. "We don't have much time," Julia said. "Prepare for landing. Let's go meet our new friends." The descent to the surface was difficult, with atmospheric disturbances causing the ship to buck and sway. But Luis managed to bring them down safely at the designated coordinates, a large flat area near what appeared to be a domed city. As the EUA dust settled around the horizon, Julia and her selected landing party prepared to exit the ship. They wore lightweight environmental suits as a precaution, though the Ardelians had assured them their atmosphere was breathable for humans. "Remember," Julia said to her team, "we're about to become the first humans to meet an alien species. Let's make a good impression." The airlock cycled, the door opened, and Julia Hayes took the first human step onto an alien world. Standing before her, waiting with a small group of tall, crystalline beings, was Kalira. The Ardelian scientist raised her three-fingered hand in greeting. "Welcome to Ardelia, Captain Hayes," she said in perfect English, learned from the transmissions they had exchanged. "You have traveled an impossible distance to reach us." Julia stepped forward, and following the protocol Carolyn had established based on Ardelian cultural information, placed her right hand over her heart. "We came as quickly as we could. We only wish we could have arrived sooner." The meeting hall inside the Ardelian Dome City buzzed with activity. Humans and Ardelians worked side by side, their differences momentarily forgotten in the face of urgent necessity. Captain Hayes stood with Kalira and Terran, reviewing holographic maps of the evacuation zones. "The quantum anomaly has increased its rate of expansion again," Kalira explained, her crystalline form casting rainbow reflections on the walls. "We have less than 4 days before it reaches the city." Julia nodded, grimly. "We've modified our cargo bays to accommodate your atmosphere and gravity needs, but as you can see, the horizon can only transport a small number of your people." "We understand," Terran said. "We have prepared our genetic repository, samples of our entire species' DNA and biological history. That must be saved above all." "What about your own ships?" asked Keith Barnes. "You mentioned having vessels of your own." Kalira gestured to another hologram showing 3 sleek, oval-shaped craft. "These are our last remaining ships. They were not designed for long-distance space travel, and their drive systems were damaged during an earlier evacuation attempt." Luis Vega, the Horizon's engineer, studied the alien ships with interest. "Their design is different, but physics is physics. Maybe we can help repair them. That would increase our evacuation capacity significantly," Julia agreed. "Luis, take a team and see what you can do." As Luis left with several crew members and Ardelian technicians, Carolyn Mitchell approached with news. "Captain, I've been in contact with Earth. They're preparing for our return and the arrival of the Ardelians. Temporary habitats are being constructed in several countries." Julia felt a surge of pride. Despite the political differences that often divided humanity, the world had united to welcome these refugees from the stars. "We should begin loading the genetic repository immediately," she decided. "Then we'll start boarding those most crucial to rebuilding your civilization, scientists, historians, medical experts." Terran's eyes dimmed slightly. "You're asking us to choose who lives and who dies." "I'm sorry," Julia said softly. "I wish we could save everyone." Over the next 2 days, humans and Ardelians worked without rest. Luis and his team made remarkable progress on the alien ships, combining Earth technology with Ardelian systems in ways neither species had imagined possible. "It's fascinating," Luis explained to Julia during a brief break. "Their technology is partially biological. It grows and adapts. We've managed to integrate some of our power systems with their navigation controls. It's not pretty, but it should work." Meanwhile, the loading of the horizon continued. The genetic repository, a large crystalline structure containing the biological heritage of an entire civilization, was secured in the ship's most protected section. Selected Ardelians began boarding in small groups, each allowed to bring only what they could carry. Dr. Franklin worked with Kalira to study the quantum anomaly, hoping to predict its behavior and buy more time. "It's like nothing we've ever seen," he reported. "It's not just consuming matter. It's altering the fundamental laws of physics in this region of space." On the third day, disaster struck. The anomaly suddenly surged, sending a shockwave across the planet's surface. Buildings collapsed in the distance, the ground cracked beneath their feet. "We need to leave now," Julia ordered as the dome protecting the city began to fracture. "Everyone to the ships." Chaos erupted as the evacuation plan accelerated. The 3 repaired Ardelian vessels were quickly filled beyond their intended capacity. The Horizon took on as many refugees as could safely fit, with crew members giving up their quarters to make room. As they prepared for emergency liftoff, Julia received terrible news. "The shockwave damaged our quantum drive," Keith reported. "Dr. Franklin thinks he can repair it, but it will take time." "Time we don't have," Julia replied, watching through the viewport as the anomaly grew visibly larger. "We'll have to use conventional engines to reach a safe distance, then make repairs." The decision was made. The Horizon and the 3 Ardelian ships would leave immediately, but there were still thousands of Ardelians who couldn't be evacuated. "We'll return for them," Julia promised Terran, "as soon as we repair the drive." But Kalira shook her head sadly. "There won't be time. The next wave will destroy what remains of our world." A silence fell over the bridge. Then Dr. Franklin spoke up. "I'll stay behind with a small team. We'll continue studying the anomaly and helping the remaining Ardelians prepare their own ships. If we can understand this thing better, maybe we can predict its behavior and find a way to escape its effects." "That's suicide," Julia objected. "Maybe not," Franklin insisted. "If we can repurpose some of the Ardelian technology, we might find another solution. But someone needs to stay and try." In the end, 5 humans volunteered to remain behind with the Ardelians: Dr. Franklin, 2 engineers, and 2 medical officers. Julia hated leaving them, but knew it was their only chance to save those who couldn't fit on the ships. "We'll come back for you," she promised as they said their goodbyes. Franklin smiled. "I know you will, Captain. We'll be waiting." The journey back to Earth pushed both ships and crews to their limits. The Horizon's quantum drive was repaired in space, a dangerous process that nearly resulted in disaster more than once. The Ardelian vessels, never designed for interstellar travel, struggled to maintain structural integrity. On the 15th day, Julia received the worst news. One of the Ardelian ships was failing. Its makeshift drive system couldn't handle the stress of another jump. Without hesitation, Dr. William Franklin, who had remained on the Horizon after all, as the only person who fully understood the quantum drive, volunteered to transfer to the failing ship to attempt repairs mid-flight. "The field stabilizers are collapsing," he explained, as he prepared to make the dangerous spacewalk between vessels. "If I can reroute power through the secondary systems, they might hold together for one more jump." "It's too dangerous," Julia argued. "If the field collapses while you're inside, then 40 Ardelians will die," Franklin finished. "I won't let that happen." The spacewalk was successful. Franklin boarded the failing ship and worked frantically to stabilize its systems. When the time came for the next quantum jump, all 4 ships activated their drives simultaneously. 3 emerged safely. The 4th, Franklin's ship, did not. Julia ordered an immediate search, but deep in her heart she knew the quantum field had collapsed during the jump. The ship and everyone aboard were gone. When the 3 remaining vessels finally reached Earth's solar system, they were met by an international fleet of ships. Humanity had continued preparing during their absence, building orbital habitats for the Ardelian refugees. The returning ships were escorted to Earth amidst global celebration. For the first time in human history, people from another world would live among them. 1 month later, Julia stood with Kalira on a hilltop in New Zealand, one of several locations around Earth where Ardelian settlements were being established. The crystalline structures of their new homes glittered in the sunlight. Your people have given us more than just shelter, Kalira said. You've given us hope when the entire galaxy turned away. We did what anyone should have done, Julia replied. But they didn't, Kalira pointed out. Only Earth answered our call. As they watched the sun set, a message arrived from NASA. Julia read it, her eyes widening in disbelief. What is it? Kalira asked. Julia looked up at the stars that were just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. It's from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. They've detected multiple ships approaching from the direction of Ardelia. Franklin? Kalira whispered, hope in her voice. Julia nodded, a smile spreading across her face. The message said there are at least 20 ships. It seems your people found a way to escape after all. Later that night, as celebrations erupted across Earth at the news, Julia received one more update. The approaching fleet included not only Ardelian vessels, but ships from other civilizations as well. The Galactic Council, shamed by humanity's actions, had finally sent aid. Too late to save Ardelia itself, but in time to help rescue those left behind. In our oldest legends, Terran told the United Nations Assembly the following day, there is a saying, the measure of a civilization is not its technological achievements, but its compassion for others. Humanity has proven itself to be the most advanced civilization we have ever encountered.